Hello, and welcome to the South Coast Artists Index, where artists, performers, and writers, as well as curators, directors, and supporters, anyone with ties to the creative community, drops by to introduce themselves to you. We'll talk about their beginnings, their vision, their passion, and so much more. The South Coast Artists Index podcast is brought to you in part by Heavenly Spirits, who invites you to celebrate the art of life and creative communities everywhere.
Hi, this is Ron Fortier with another episode of the South Coast Artist Index. And as per usual, I wonder how many times I've said that on these podcasts, I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves and, more specifically, spell their name.
Awesome. Well, I have a really standard name, and it should be very easy to spell with no oddities. My name is Roger Andrews. That's R-O-G-E-R, no D in the middle, R-O-G-E-R, Andrews, A-N-D-R-E-W-S.
But I bet you still get some kind of wacko things because, so what's your last name?
Right, yeah, Andrew Rogers, right? No,
exactly, right? Or they spooner? Oh, that's not spoonerization. They flip it.
Yeah, that's right. There's no spooning going on with that. Yeah.
The first intern I had at an agency I worked at, her name was Anne Margaret.
Oh boy.
And first of all, they wanted to know, was she related to Anne Margaret? She's like, sure, everybody who's named Anne Margaret is related to Anne Margaret. Yeah. And there's some people in the audience going, who the hell's Anne Margaret?
Oh,
look it up.
Did we just both dated ourselves, didn't we, just now? Right, didn't we? Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
In fact, I'm only just a little aware of Anne Margaret being a kid of the 70s. So I'm only a little bit of aware.
Yeah, she was a hot throb. I mean, she was, she's doing well till she fell off the stage and injured herself and, went into the history book, so to speak. But it's like, well, honey, what's your last name? Margaret. No, that's your middle name. And it's like infuriating because like, don't you think I would know what my middle name was? Don't you have a middle name?
Right.
No.
Don't you find that some people, like, I think they lack for something to say. So I think the thing that pops into their head is not exactly fully baked. Right? That question is not fully baked.
That is a great name for a title. A great title for something not fully baked.
Fully baked. There's the next podcast right there. We just launched it. You and I. Not fully baked.
Well, Roger, this is your second bite of the apple here at South Coast Artist Index. And today you're back for a couple of reasons. Number one, to catch us up on what you've been doing since the last time you were here.
Sure.
And even though we're still talking about it, I think we can let it out there about what we're planning to do for the upcoming event next month, which we'll talk about once you tell us what you've done up until now.
All right. Well, I don't exactly recall where I left off. I'm sure there was a lot of adventures that have happened since the last my little meeting with you.
Right.
So here's the thing, right? So I am still a freelance illustrator. I am still a commercial artist. I am still the guy that kind of does a lot of artwork for toy and game companies. So that hasn't changed. That's still the same. Mm-hmm. But what I've added to my repertoire is I've decided I'm going to give back a little more. And so what I'm going to do is offer my expertise, my years of experience kind of working in character design and product art. And I want to teach that, pass that on to the youth. I want to share that with the kids, share all these decades of tricks and tips that I've been able to accumulate over time. I want to share that with the kids. And so what I've decided to do is form basically a art workshop for the youth. That's the plan. And specifically, because now I'm so much of my work is as doing it as a digital artist, it's going to be a digital art workshop. So what I like about that, Ron, is that it is not going to be an interference or direct competition to anyone who has like a painting event or a sketching in the park event. This is all digital. It's literally all art done on the iPad.
Okay.
So that is kind of really what I've been putting a lot of my emphasis on over the last, say, 6 months, building, growing, developing a curriculum, if you will. And actually, a curriculum is not even a fair word because it's very, it's looser than that, and it's less formal than that in the way that we're going to be conducting these workshops. It's going to be more like a series of tutorials. It's the best way to describe it.
All right. How-tos.
How-tos. But here's the tricky part, or should I say the good part in a tricky way. We're going to be doing it in person. So we're bringing the sort of the digital experience in person. So we want it to be human. We want to actually be able to, for it almost to be like a little mini community of these young artists who want to sort of learn more about how to draw their favorite anime or their favorite cartoon character, comic book character, or environment. And they're going to have that opportunity to do it with us together in a room, feeling the energy of other kids learning at the same time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And several thoughts hit me at the same time. Number one is where we last left off, the last time you were here, just pre-pandemic. It was just like on the cusp.
Okay.
Because I remember I was working at the Dartmouth Cultural Center and I was trying to get you to come in. You know, it was like I got hired that Friday. Was it? Yeah, I think I was hired that week and sometime that week, and then the next day is when the whole world sort of went dark on us.
Whoa.
And it was like, okay, so everything that was scheduled, all these live classes and such, now what do we do? So trying to get people to shift gears while they were still running was difficult because a lot of the instructors like, I don't know anything about online. I don't know how to videotape myself, you know, or using that term, videotape, which takes you back to...
There we go. Anne Margaret, I think, did the first videotape.
Exactly. So that was like a big shift. But I do remember that SketchyGOichie was really an interesting concept because of, there was that Japanese kind of vibe to it.
Correct.
And... that coming from the anime, and that was still very hot back then.
Absolutely.
I don't know if it's had a resurgence because, you know, these things go up and down.
Yeah, I think its resurgence is almost like this strange sort of mountain cliff that just keeps going up and up and up.
Is it generational?
You know what? It's crossing generations.
All right.
I think what's happened now is parents who were brought up in anime of the 90s and the early 2000s, they've passed that love on to the kids. And I think there's just this whole new fervor for anime. In fact, I was at the Rhode Island Anime Con this weekend. And it's particularly on Saturday. The midday on Saturday was like insane. It was just, there was so many young people. Actually, there's people of all ages.
It's not going away soon then.
I don't see why it would.
I was talking to our neighbor who's a video designer. And we were talking about Atari and,
and kids, Atari is a video game system.
Right, and Nintendo.
Yeah,
Nintendo and Atari, which were the two big ones, American, the originally American.
Yeah.
And about this generational thing, I was telling him, and it's been quite a while, but I used that as a case study when I was teaching marketing, that little brother could never get any time because big brother wouldn't let them, horn in. And the girls, to use that term, didn't really care. So the Japanese saw this incredible opportunity because they know about generational movement, and they waited for desperation, and they bought the patents, the rights, the copyrights and everything, knowing full well that little brother who was chomping at the bit to get on that thing now, not only can I play this game, but it's way better than yours ever was.
Right, exactly.
So anime, I'm assuming, is kind of flowing in that kind of way. It's changed considerably, right?
It has, anime and manga, in the sort of printed versions of it. What I think is interesting about it, and I kind of noticed this, and you probably noticed this as well, there was a point perhaps in the early 2000s where the girls, for lack of a better way, again, to be polite,
young
ladies,
sort
of adopted that same sort of just fanaticism for anime. And when that happened, I think it just expanded. It expanded and grew in a way that I think is maybe not eternal, but it feels like it's going to be long lasting.
Really?
And it just, I assume, again, I don't have the numbers on it, I haven't done the market research on it, but I assumed since that point, everyone who's producing manga or who's producing anime has seen this incremental or probably, just never-ending growth. And with the advent of, are you familiar with Crunchyroll?
No.
So Crunchyroll is kind of like, it's like the how to describe it, it's almost the Netflix of of anime, and they bring in, like, they import. And in fact, I don't know if it's an American company or not. In fact, I don't know the details behind it, but I am aware of Crunchyroll as a brand.
Okay.
And it basically has sort of, it's allowed it to distribute anime on a wide scale to American audiences, probably universal, audience or international audience. Yeah. And it's so prevalent now, Ron. It's like, it's everywhere. And that's why when I attended the Anime Con, in fact, the Anime Con, I think, was competing. There was another event in Boston the same day, or the same weekend.
Right.
And even then, it was still a pretty robust attendance. So that tells me that it's not going anywhere.
There's two things that pop in my head. One of them is, I can't remember the beer brand. It was British.
You had to ask a guy who doesn't drink.
Oh, yeah. It's not a brand that I think most Americans would even know. I never had heard about it. But it was on the reel for the 1985 British Art Directors and Designers Award.
Okay.
Phenomenal commercials. Oh, my God. I mean, they were absolutely phenomenal. But there was a series of them, and the tagline was always, it touches this beer. It touches the parts that other beers cannot touch.
Wow, okay.
And then juxtapose that with J. Peterman from the J. Peterman catalog. When will American businesses realize that people want things that make their lives the way they wish they were? So what is it about anime and manga that touches the parts that other things cannot, and make their lives the way they wish they were? There's something.
Yeah,
there's a lacking that this art form is fulfilling. Correct?
Right. Yeah, it's touching something. And you know what I think it is? Maybe because there's so much variety, right? The topics that they choose to make films and TV shows in Japan. I mean, it could be like ping pong. They'll do an anime on ping pong or soccer, and then they'll do one that's the most extreme, wild, giant robots fighting, giant monsters. And then they'll do one that's just like a relationship-based one. So I think they've expanded, like, their reach and their topics and their subject matter in such a way that you're hitting just about every audience where they live. And it's really interesting. Like, it used to be when I was a kid, I think when I was a child, again, I'm a child of the 70s. So it was very limited what came through in the early 80s. I was like in middle school, like in the early 80s. And what came over, what was imported, was very limited. And obviously, it was English dubbed to the nines. And who knows how close to the actual action we were watching.
Right.
But the reality is, like, we ate it up. And I'm wondering if that feeling we have of it just being a little bit different than what Americans do. What they produce, there's an aesthetic.
Yeah.
There's a right in the line art and the color choices and the way the characters are rendered and the way the stylization of the action and how it's portrayed. There's something they tapped into something. It strikes a nerve, and I think maybe it's that nerve that they struck with us back in the late 70s, early 80s till now. I think they're still drilling that mine, and they're producing gold.
Maybe because by the 70s we lost all that creativity, verve. Corporations took over. Told artists what. I mean, Looney Tunes and Melody Tunes. Oh my God! I mean, I could only imagine having been a fly on the wall when they were doing their creative sessions, storyboarding, and so on and so forth. And those are the cartoons I grew up with. And I was speaking with someone the other day about, okay, so you watch the same exact, Looney Tune cartoon, like Daffy Duck, and you've seen it maybe 100 times, maybe 1,000 times. But when you were 9 years old, you saw it one way. When you were 12 years old, you're like, I don't remember that part. When you were 20 years old, you're going, hey, I definitely don't remember that.
Right.
And when you were like 30, you're like, oh my God, they let them get away with that?
Right. Perception. So it's perception.
It's perception, and it was so broad because there was like a little, nudge, nudge, wink, wink jokes, adult jokes like tucked in there. There were tropes all over the place. And then all of a sudden it got to these really bad cartoons. I think about the only thing I can remember from the 70s that's worth watching and maybe, and I don't know the history behind it, but it was Johnny Quest.
Johnny Quest. Oh, so Johnny Quest. I always thought those Johnny Quest that I was watching were reruns. I assumed they were from the late 60s. So those were actually produced in the 70s?
I don't think they were produced in this country either.
Oh, maybe not. Yeah, I don't even know. I wish I was.
They have that kind of foreign, to use that term, not non-domestic vibe.
So sensibility that was a little different than what Americana was at that time.
Exactly. So, and now it brings me to another thing too.
And by the way, I admire how you've just. But for the listeners, you just got this in your head. You're just going. You're riffing. You're like a comedian. You're like a Dave Chappelle. Like you just get on stage. Yes, you're prepared.
Yeah.
But it's in there, right? I admire that.
Well, I'm also trying to make myself smarter too, because you're the smart guy in the room. I'm just the guy that answers asks the questions. I don't have any answers. But it brings
clearly I don't either. I'm gonna do my best.
Well, okay. So you're teaching now. You're teaching kids. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is it about what you have to offer that excites them? I mean, do they see stardom? Do they see? It's like, okay, they can't be an athlete, they can't be a performer, but they get into the arts now, and they think maybe they can be a star in the arts. Is it that, or is it just something else?
Yeah, to be honest with you, there's some of that. I think perhaps with the older kids, so what we're trying to do is we're doing it in 2 tiers. Mm-hmm. We want to have sort of a class for the younger ones, the kind of, we're calling it the newbies, the little ones, right? From 7 to, say, 12, 13, which is an introduction. And what we're trying to capture with them is to instill that spirit of creativity, right? To note that you could, right? Theoretically, and all parents can attest to this. You can sit down all day and watch, streams or TikTok or the same cartoon on Cartoon Network for the 80th time. You can do that, or maybe you can be someone who can create these images. And what we're trying to tap into is this probably the same kids that we both were growing up, the ones who probably lean a little more towards being creative and maybe generating some images, generating some content, and deriving joy from that, right? And I can only speak for myself that I myself derive so much joy from just sitting down and drawing by myself in a room. I could entertain myself for hours. Even to this day, I can still entertain myself and get lost in the art.
Yeah.
And so for me, for the younger ones, it's likely to sort of kind of like, I'm trying to like install that software. For those who don't maybe have it already, or for the ones who already have that inkling, that desire to be creative, I want to foster it. I want to sort of like put a little gasoline on that fire. I want to sort of give them something to be excited about in terms of being creative, And whether that, for the little ones, they're not thinking career at that point. They're not thinking like, am I going to be a star? Or am I going to be a celebrity doing this? They're like, I like those characters. I sure would love to know how to draw them. And for those who already are drawing them, how can I draw them better? How can it be more effective? How can I, for me, I want to teach them how to be more dynamic and change the camera angles and do all kinds of things that will elevate that art to the point where they can really be proud and confident. And let's face it, what do we all want to do? Even when anyone who's producing art, there's some artists who are fine artists and it's like, I'm about doing my art and I don't really care what anyone thinks. Right. But most people, when they produce a piece of art, they want to share it. And I want to have them feeling really confident about the art they share. For the younger ones. For the older ones, the ones who are maybe middle school and above, they're now starting to get that seed of like, all right, can I do this as a career? Can I be someone who works for a video game company? Or can I be an animator? Can I be a character designer? Or can I just be an artist who produces the stuff that I love in a style that appeals to an audience so that they will now commission me and sustain me financially through life? And so what I want to do with the second tier, the second level, is to create an atmosphere and create sort of almost like a model. I want to show them what I've learned over the years that has allowed me to successfully earn a living doing art. I want to pass that on. But I also want to Trojan horse it in. I want to actually give them some techniques and some things that will actually make sure they have appealing looking art along the way. That's my goal. And I think to your question, and hopefully this is a long-winded answer.
No.
But to your question, is like it's in two stratas. One is like get that love for art, knowing that as a little one, knowing that that's something you can just do. Like you're going to have this thing and you're going to be able to get better at it and you're going to feel more confident. For the older ones, there's that. Plus like, who knows? You might be able to turn this into something you can actually, like, you know, if you want to go out on a Saturday night and have something to eat, you pay for it with the art that you created, you know? And for us, like, likely on an iPad.
Yeah, so that now my brain just exploded into 3 different directions. Let's see if I can bring it together.
Let's catch them. Let's catch all 3.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, self-actualization. So I'm assuming that these kids who don't know what self-actualization means, but
I barely know. I'm hanging on by my fingernails.
Are being self-actualized because they're feeling good doing this, and they're interested. And there's that whole term of creativity, which, for some reason, you know, there are forces in this country have tried to kill intellectualism.
Yes, why?
And there are forces, the same forces are trying to kill creativity. Why is that?
It makes no sense. It's almost like, again, and this is way left field, Ron, right?
No, wait, believe me.
This is me. This is right. Outside the box. It's right. It almost is like, and I don't truly believe this, but I hear murmurs of this, like around the, I listen to podcasts, obviously the Artist Index is, the number one podcast, but there are the sort of people that feel like those forces are almost predetermined, predestined. It's almost like we're in this weird matrix. It's the only thing I can think of. If you think of the film The Matrix, and the sort of the dumbing down of society and the sort of the as a measure of control. I know it's deeper than probably we want to go with it, but I think there's a measure of control when people aren't necessarily that inspired. And so you just kind of consume until you die. Consume, work to pay for those consumptions, pay your taxes, and die.
Yeah.
But when you're creative, you break the matrix, right? Now you're a rebel, right? When you're creative, now you self-determined. You can splinter off into different directions. You can create businesses and different modes of operation than what would be a common worker would do. And I love the idea, because I've been so fortunate, Ron, to not have spent much of my adult life working for anyone but myself. And I want that for everyone. I know it's not possible.
Maybe the underlying term is control. There's a bit of control.
Control. That's it. That's you landed on it, and you hit it in one. You hit it first pitch, you hit it in one. It's control. And I think if the masses aren't creative and they're not looking for more beyond their world, and they're sort of satiated by, what is on TV or what's on TikTok and what's
Observers on versus producers.
Right. And I want people to feel the pride of producing something, right? And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be ground shattering, right? Earth shattering. It doesn't have to be that, but it has to be something that you created that you feel proud of. That's what I like the idea of.
I was an only child for 12 years until my parents remarried, and then they had their own children, each on each side. So growing up the only child, creativity seemed to be a way to entertain yourself, and I don't like the term entertain, but
was it to keep you busy?
It was to keep you busy, and it was nothing else to do. And I think probably there's that thing that creative people have, and that itch that has to be scratched.
Right.
So I'm wondering now, and reflecting on that time and that experience, reflecting now, families are smaller. Is that a driver?
I wonder. Yeah, I wonder, because you're right. Generally, it's usually 2 kids, right?
Right.
Most of the families in our neighborhood, we live in an awesome neighborhood in Westport, and it's generally 2 kids, maybe a third,
and sometimes there's a gap between them. It's not like 7 and 8. It's like 7, 8, 9, 10.
Right.
So 2, 3, 4 years, and even more. In
I can
between
speak
children.
to a gap. I mean, from my oldest, who's 29, to my youngest, who's 9.
Ooh.
Right, and we've gotten the one in the middle that's 21. So it's look at that 20-year gap between the two. So that, I don't think that's the gap you're referring to.
No, my brother who lives in Germany, he's got you beat. At 17, it was 17-year gap.
See that? Imagine that. Right? It's wild.
Yeah.
So it's
insane.
For us with that significant gap.
Right.
But I agree with you. I mean, smaller family sizes.
Right.
But here's the thing too. I think part of it, and I don't know if you want to go in this direction, but part of it is like lots of moms work now too, moms and dads, lots of single moms, lots of single dads.
Yep.
Right, and so and lots of families that are non-traditional.
You're gonna say that,
right?
Yeah,
and again, we both come from an era where it was more the norm, mom and dad at home, and generally mom at home all day.
Right.
It was more common back then. Now it's like everybody's working. And so I think that the TV, the internet, the phone has replaced us.
Yeah.
Our parental roles in a lot of
surrogates.
places. Yeah,
Surrogates.
yeah, right. Yeah, it's entertainment. It's attention. I call them attention vampires.
Attention. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they're attention vampires, and they will continue to suck you. They will suck you dry.
Yeah.
If you allow it. And I'm just trying to figure out a way, Ron, to me, I've got the crucifix and the holy water. I'm trying to figure out a way to ward off that vampire.
Yeah, and the garlic necklace.
Right?
Yeah.
At least until the robots and the AI take over. I want to do it until they take over. I want to seed everyone with as much creativity as possible.
And that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh my goodness!
But in the middle of all that too is a wise woman once asked me to choose. When it came down to my art, did I want my art to sustain me, or did I want my art to support me? And I said, why can't I have both? She says, it's not possible. It's very rare, but it's not really possible. So now I see the your clientele, these these children, and I'm also thinking, because of the way things are in the world, they cut back the arts in schools.
I know.
And I remember going back to the 80s when I was substitute teaching in art. In fact, I refused the position because they went from classroom art instruction in middle school to itinerant teachers. I used to call them the bag ladies because they would have their little shopping cart with all their stuff on there. And it went from art not as a subject, but as some sort of an entertainment period where it was just to keep you quiet, or they had to fill in a period of some sort. So that's what they did.
It's like rec time at the asylum.
Exactly. Yeah. And so maybe there is a backlash to all of this. But do you have any case studies, any success stories that you can share with us from some of your earliest students that, they came into it just for this, and this is where they are now?
I love that you give me that that softball, because the most significant case study, I'm not sure if you're aware, and this may have happened between in fact, I was teaching at UMass, illustration at UMass during our first go around back in 2020.
Yeah, can I hear that train coming down the track? Okay.
Right. So I was teaching then, right? Yeah. And one of my students was Ashliana Felice, or Felix as it's spelled, right?
Yeah.
Man, that's an ultimate success story. Because, I mean, when I taught her in class, you know how there's this class, right? You know from being a teacher, right? Yeah. There's some that they've got it, right? There's something about like their work ethic, their attention to detail, their passion.
Their drive,
right? Their drive, right?
Yeah.
And I identified that in her as a instructor, right? And I was fortunate enough to, like, when she was preparing for graduate, she reached out to me and said, "Would you mind mentoring me?" And I was like, "Heck yeah," because you deserve to have like some tutelage from someone who kind of knows the business.
Right.
And she's incredible, right? I mean, she's a wonderful artist. I think her thing is Ashix. It's ASHIX. There may be some underscore or something, but if you look that up on Instagram and Facebook, you'll find her stuff, and she's got a website and everything.
She's still in the area?
In fact, she's in New Bedford.
Oh, okay.
In fact, she is my collaborator.
We got to get her on the show.
Yeah, no, she's my collaborator for this. Yeah. So, by the way, it's called SketchyGOichie Draw. With an exclamation point. Okay. That's the name of the program.
SketchyGOichie Draw, just in case people didn't know what SketchyGOichie was.
That's right. Yeah, Draw. And Draw is an acronym.
Okay.
So it's Draw is digital.
Okay.
So it's Draw. It's digital rendering and art workshops. Draw. DRAW.
Now, again,
with an and sign in the middle.
Because my brain is all about connecting dots for some weird reason. But one of the things with New Bedford, with the Swain School of Design, which is still a very touchy subject for a lot of people.
Still, even after all these many decades,
yeah,
huh?
they just feel like, we was screwed. And it's weird because the pattern, if you really wanted to get into it, the pattern of what happened with the Swain School being absorbed into SMU
Was it SMU at that time, right?
SMU and blah, blah, blah. And then Mount Ida being absorbed by UMass, and a lot. They didn't get the funerary sciences, but they did get their art programs.
Sure.
But the point is, it's for the average person. And what I mean by the person who did not go to art school for higher education, they went to the Saturday morning classes, the art classes at Swain.
Awesome.
There is a generation of people who you say Saturday morning art classes at Swain, and they're like,
oh, they lament, yeah.
There's something. It's this need. There are some people who just absolutely, positively, the je ne sais quoi pas. I don't know why, but that really need that,
right?
And it is denied, or limited, or isolated. And yes, as teachers, there's nothing more rewarding than having a student and being there at that moment. And I'm going to call it rebirth. It's almost like a thunderbolt hits them. You've been hammering on them, gently.
Yep.
Blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, they get zapped and they turn to you. And it's like, I got it.
Right.
And boom, they're on their way. And it's a incredible thrill ride.
It's like, and all you want to do is just hang on to that ride.
Yeah.
Right? And just and help steer it if you can. Make sure it stays out of the ditch. And with Ash, I have no doubt that she's going to be a star. In fact, she is so enthusiastic about supporting and being a part of this drawing workshop. She actually has a background in early childhood ed and dealing with special needs kids. So she's on point. In fact, she's so wonderful at, hey, she's just a good person. She's got that down. That's a given. Obviously we want to work around good people. So she's a good person, but she's a talented not just like a technician. She can draw and color and digitally paint. And she's like me. She's an iPad person, an iPad convert. And so on her own, her illustration is phenomenal. And she has, she's a freelancer now, right? She had that angst, that artist angst. I got out of school. Now what? And she's getting to that point. And I think all freelancers, all people who sort of kind of got to do this under their own steam. She's now realizing, if I stay with this and I'm earnest and I'm a good steward to the art and the creativity, and I'm reliable and I'm someone that people like and want to work with, it's going to grow and grow and grow. And you asked me who's the successful story. That's just one that comes to mind. I have others, but she's the most significant one because she's in my life in a most significant way.
All right, so let me jump back a generation.
Sure.
Who lit you up?
You know what's funny? I've got a couple of people that laid the ladder out for me to climb up. The first one that really comes to mind is Jim Gonzaga. I say we called him Gonzaga back then.
But some people say Gonzaga.
You say Zaga, I say Zaga.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah.
Jim Gonzaga, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
He was my because I went to New Bedford Vogue.
I was going to say
on the original.
He was there. Yeah.
The original podcast. But so he was there at the time. He was a sign painting teacher. And so forgive me if I'm kind of retreading that, but so I had no desire to do sign painting. I was this guy who read comic books. What do I know from a guy who's lettering boats and painting on the side of camper vans?
Finch and Badger brushes? Yeah, what are those?
Right, literally, I don't know what linseed oil is for. I don't get, and I can't remember. I can't recall the name of the enamel that we used to use.
It was Ron Art.
Yeah. Right?
It was Ron Art, yeah.
All of that stuff. And so he was an absolute master. One of these guys, old school, could pinstripe.
With the calligraphy, and with the Badger brush, yeah.
Unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. And you just did that because it was so tactile.
It was unbelievable.
For a non-artist to be looking at two guys talking about art and how somebody can drop a line and feel excited by it,
right?
Stimulated by it, and they're just I don't get it. Well, there was he was a Belgian. Don't ever call a Belgian a Frenchman.
Oh, heck no.
Maurice Jospert. Do you remember Maurice Jospert?
I don't.
From the Candle Works. He was the original owner of
I worked for Maurice.
Okay, Maurice Jospert, okay? And it's a world away from the everyday. Okay, that was his tagline for the commercials he would do. And we were at a thing for the Chamber of Commerce, and I believe it was his wife. And it was such a, and I'll use the term French thing, because the French claim this kind of thing.
Okay.
But he ran his hand about 2 inches away from his wife's, the nape of her neck, down to her thigh. Unconsciously, subconsciously, whatever, without thought. But he just traced the shape of her body with that one line drop.
Okay.
And imagine if a piece of charcoal was in that man's hand.
Right.
He would have dropped that. To see these things is so important. The people who know a little bit about art and art education in the broadest sense will say, well, art is important because it teaches you how to solve problems. And as you well know, it's a what's the name? I've been thinking about this for the last 2 days, and I should have looked it up because it's a Google world.
Okay.
It starts with an O, and it's got the bus in it. The snake with its tail in its mouth.
Omnibus?
It's
No. I know. It's that was in
Ouroboros
or something.
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
Ouroboros.
Yeah. I know exactly what you're
It's like that. So you solve one problem, and you've created another problem.
Right.
And as you know, as an instructor in art, in design, they have to work everything all at once because you can't
Right.
just stay
You're playing multi-dimensional chess. When
Exactly.
You're doing this stuff.
It is multi-dimensional chess. But I remember having the same conversation with Adrian Teo, who at the time was the dean of CVPA at UMass Dartmouth. And he said, we had the exact same conversation, and he said, yes, but there's another element that people never refer to, and that's the fact that we are trained to see patterns. And those patterns that we see come in handy for so many other things in our lives.
Right.
And so it's not just esoteric. I've always said that art and music are both sides of the same coin, and that coin is mathematics, and I am not a math person whatsoever.
I'm with you there.
But stop and think about art is math seen, music is math heard.
Yep. I feel like music is more mathematical, right? Because the way it's structured.
And jazz is like algebra to the nth degree, right?
Right. Yeah. 100%. Right. There's a timing, and there's a rhythm that is based off of fours, or you put the beat on the one, and there is like legit mathematical.
Right.
I think with the visuals, yes, we both get to improvise. Right, you get the improvisational jazz, of course.
Right.
But with art, there is a blank page, and you dip your brush into the ink, and you just something comes from some zone that is, maybe there's math in it. Maybe once you've created the piece, you can look at the rule of thirds, and you can start seeing some of the things and why that compositionally looks so great.
Yeah.
But there's something about visual art. And maybe I'm biased. I could be a little biased.
Well, we're both biased.
Yeah, we're right. And it's just like there's an ability to take a blank canvas, a blank document in Procreate. There's a blank whatever, and just select a brush or select a pen or select something, and just because I do it every day.
Right.
And it's hard, right? It's hard. You know how it is when you live in your own skin. It's hard to kind of see it, but I never forget, and I'm always respectful of the fact that we get to sort of just create from scratch, and I never lose sight of it, and I always are appreciative that I was given this, we can call it a gift, but whatever it is, to just come up with stuff, right? And same thing with I know what happens with music, but you generally need an instrument unless you're a singer, right? And again, there's the musical notes, and there's things that happen, but with us as visual artists, and I'm not opposing them, I'm not putting, right, we're all in the same boat, rowing the same oars. But there's something about being a visual artist that it's just like first there was nothing, and now there is something, and then over time it becomes something beautiful.
But we don't really travel alone, because the reason why I asked you to jump back a generation. So there's Jim Gonzaga, then there's you, and there's your students.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that Jeff and I talked about when we first started the Artist Index, and it's something that's still really, really hard for us to do, because, getting people to talk about people who've passed. People who are successful, like Jim Gonzaga's work.
Yeah.
Where is it? Where is it?
Yeah,
show me it.
Yeah,
I know,
right?
Where can I read about him?
Right.
Okay?
Yeah, he should be in a book. He's that great. Yeah.
And that's one of our missions to do that. And I refer to it as DNA before DNA was a common thing, and now people confuse it with. It's a genealogy. It's a family tree.
Right.
Because one artist begets another one, and it's almost biblical. Begets another one.
Yep.
I think it was.
Don't make me task you with the.
I hate it when the thoughts just evaporate. I mean, there's a lot going on up there in that cranium. But the artist said, Jens is the studio, and he's not alone. And I said it before, and it's one of my favorite artists. And I hate that. But that one by one, his instructors will leave the room, or painters he's admired will leave the room, and then the only one left in the room is him.
Right.
And then when he leaves the room, that's when the painting begins, the real painting begins. And that is something that, you've had sessions when you were developing products, whether you were doing work for yourself. What is it about that, and I mentioned this, I get to speak to a lot of people, and it's a lot of the same stories repeated, but in Spanish, the flamenco dance is when they go into this trance, and that whole thing about flamenco is just guttural, like you wouldn't believe, and
right.
I'd love to find out from an expert more about
so this needs to be a visual podcast, so we can see you flamenco.
Yeah. Well, I grew up with those guys on the Ed Sullivan Show, but the more I looked into it, more curious I was about it.
For the kids, Ed Sullivan Show was.
The Ed Sullivan Show was We're the Beatles.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
And almost everybody in the world.
Jimmy Fallon before Jimmy Fallon. Right?
Jimmy Fallon,
to root it in 2024.
And Stephen Colbert does his show from the Ed Sullivan Theater.
Yep.
Right. But the whole thing about the flamencos is when they go into this trance and they lose all consciousness.
Right.
And they're on total autopilot. And it's called duene, which comes from the Spanish, Romance language root of the owner.
Okay.
You are owned.
Okay.
You've been owned.
Right. It's like the muse is taking over.
You are like on total autopilot. You're in suspended animation or whatever. I think those are the moments that as an artist, and that doesn't mean that when you snap out of it, it's going to be the best thing you ever did. And I've never really looked beyond that point, but I do remember taking a bite out of a sandwich and then going to take a bite out of that same sandwich, what I thought was 2 or 3 minutes later, and the bread was stale, and I was like, what? And I realized 6 hours went by, and I had no idea.
Yep. What had happened, right? Yeah, that's, in sports, they call it the zone.
Yeah.
Where you get into the zone, where it's like literally the basketball hoop looks like it's this, like a hula hoop, and you can you can throw it over your shoulder and it'll go through, or the hockey goal looks huge, or the soccer goal looks huge. It's the zone. There's something that we all go into.
Right.
And I've experienced that, where to be honest, I don't do it on a daily basis. There are some jobs that are a little more challenging than others to get through. But I've hit that zone. And like you said, you just poof, you wake up from it, and it's 6 hours later, and that thing is done or close to done, and either it's awesome or it's not. But boy, you went away. You were gone.
Let's go back into your classroom.
Sure.
I'm sure there's more than an A group and a B group, but let's call it an A group and a B group. Let's call it the kids who are there to entertain themselves, they're having fun, and
And learning, hopefully. Yep.
and it's filling up a gap in time. And then you've got these other students that you're looking at going,
there's the clay. There's the clay.
There's the clay, yeah.
There's the clay. That middle school, I was invited, Westport Schools invited me to come and speak to the middle school students. Gina Bramwell, I don't know if you know Gina Bramwell, but she's the art teacher there. In fact, she teaches all the art there in the middle school section of Westport. And I was there for 2 straight days, like 2 6-hour sessions, and basically doing a portfolio presentation to the students, class after class after class, the entire school, right? And so when we get to the end of it, the reality is like those students, like some of them, not everyone, right? Because they kind of mandated to take art, so maybe there's like 2 or 3 students in every class that is genuinely interested in what I have to share. But those 2 to 3, like you see that spark, right? That's what they're moldable. Yeah. They're like, there's an opportunity again to like, I have no other way to describe it, Ron, besides like I'm installing that software, right? It's a new computer. I'm installing some new. I'm uploading an app. Yeah. I'm downloading an app into their iPhones. Yeah. And this app is like, how can I like see that thing that I like and I like to draw it in my little sketchbook, and it's the eyes are over here and the nose is over there and I can't quite figure out how to get it together. Or I like to draw heads and shoulders, which is a lot of kids like to do in their sketchbook. Heads and shoulders, all bust shots, right? Yeah, yeah. And I teach them like, no, draw the full body, right? Learn the proportions.
Fingers, I can't do fingers.
Fingers, I hate drawing hands. I hear it all the time. Like, how do I make my eyes look right?
That has been the curse forever, right?
The pain of every artist exists. How to draw hands.
Exactly.
Like, but it's a formula, like you mentioned earlier with the mathematics of it. It's a formula. It's geometry. Like once you learn the geometry of it, and then you know how to bend it. Now you're in the matrix and you're Neo. You're bending the matrix to your.
We have a friend, Gil Ashby, American Illustrator award-winning, teaches at the Creative Studies College of Creative Studies in Detroit. He's close to retirement now, and oh my God, next time he comes from Detroit, we have enough time.
Please,
unbelievable! This guy is a drawing animal. There's no other way to describe. And the passion is phenomenal. Right. It's absolutely phenomenal.
And this is someone who quite literally has been drawing for how many years? Would you guess?
Forever. Right? I mean, he went to the college for. I'm dropping it. The School for Visual Art in New York.
Okay.
SVA, right? Yeah. Or whatever.
I'm a Boston kid. I'm not going to look.
Anyway, the point is, there's this instructor that's got this incredible joy. It's almost like you got to like nail him to the floor,
right?
It's
got that passion.
It's got that incredible passion, and it's good to bounce stuff off this guy because he's an odd duck in the rest of the world, because people look at him and like, what? He's excited about what?
Right.
How to draw a nose?
Right, seriously. But you know what's so funny? There's a point, and I'm sure you reached it too, at some point where I don't even care anymore what other people think.
Yeah.
And don't you wish you could, talk about installing, don't you wish you could install that in your 13-year-old self? Like to be less concerned about the outside world and more concerned about, like,
because there were a lot of social pressures back then, and of course, it's walking that really fine line. I wasn't. My father could care less about sports, so I didn't grow up in that thing with sports, which was very manly. To use the term manly, and such. And I had I was incredibly nearsighted. Which made it impossible to learn any sports because
that ball's coming at you.
I got hit several. I mean, because it got a foot away from my head and it would just disappear and boing. Oh, there it is.
Well, that's one way to discover that the ball.
But going into creative, the tropes. Oh, he's sensitive. You know what that means, right? I mean, I don't care.
Yeah, who cares?
I don't care.
But
they bring all this baggage into it, and so we're getting close on time. But
sorry.
All right, no. So there's 2 things. This is just 2 things. Number one, I want to cover first. Next, will be the South Coast Artist Index live stream podcast from Play Arcade.
Nice.
On AHA night. This is the July AHA.
Shout out to Adam Katz.
Yes.
Katz.
Oh my God. My
Yeah.
God. Yeah. And
the whole
I'm
gang over
gonna
there.
get him in here if we're gonna have to
He's
hug
got
time.
stories for days.
Oh my God!
Oh my God.
He's got
Yeah.
he's like a cat. He's got at least like 9 different lives.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna live stream it from there. And the theme for that AHA for July is Kids Rule. So we've already spoken with you about it. We're
love
really
it.
excited about having you come in.
Right.
And joining us on that podcast,
I
so
would
we
love to
can
contribute in any way.
so we can talk
between now
more
and then.
about
Yeah.
this, and
Yeah.
also it'll help spread the word of Sketchy Goichie Draw.
Sure.
Because there are so many parents, they fall into those 2 groups. What do you want that stuff for? And the other one's like, I wish there was something where my kids. You can't be out there, and you could be on every social media platform, and it's still going to be a bunch of people like,
Right.
I didn't know you existed. So if that's helpful.
Listen, all of it is helpful, and I
Right.
appreciate. And I said this before we actually
Right, right.
went live.
Right.
I really want to earnestly be a part of the AHA, and I want to be in the scene, and I want
Right.
to contribute. And I love it. I mean, I just, like you said, it's grown so much, and I love that. I'm so proud to be from New Bedford, and this thing happens, and I can tell people, we have these awesome AHA nights.
Right. Yeah.
I'm so it fills me with so much pride to be able to share that with people outside of our area.
We've come a long way, and from so many different directions, and I want to see this vibe continue. And then I'm going to get on my soapbox, if you don't mind, because I want to throw this in front of you.
Show, right?
Well, no, I want to throw it in front of you, and I brought it up, many times, almost every podcast probably.
Mm-hmm.
But you went to the vocational school. There's the comprehensive school.
Yeah.
But there's this huge gap. And that gap is exactly what you're doing with SketchyGOichie Draw.
Good.
We need a school for the visual and performing arts.
We do.
And I think, again, just throwing it out there, that the Orpheum Theater, one of the reasons I've been told why it isn't being restored, there's not enough grassroots, is because the people are afraid it'll be in competition with the Zeiterion. And with the Zeiterion, they do everything it is to keep that place going.
Sure.
But if it's not a theater and it's a school for the visual and performing arts,
it's a different
it's
thing,
a
yeah.
perfect remodel.
Right. Which, by the way, I supremely support the Zeiterion and all the programs.
Right, exactly.
Particularly,
Exactly.
all the outreach for the kids and
Right,
the community.
right.
But I agree. I don't know. To be honest, I don't know if that would be competition. I don't know if
No,
it doesn't feel like it
because
would be.
this would be a school for the
Right,
visual and
yeah, it
performing
doesn't
arts.
feel like it would be.
So that means now that you could, not only did you get your art curricular at whatever school, and I think it should be junior and senior high school level,
Right.
but you're getting this because I really find that kids, to use that term, because I'm old enough to use that term, the kids.
Wait, what's the age? Is there an age? Is there a specific age that we cross over when you use kids for everything?
Kids today.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Kids, there's this missing element, and I think, and it brings me back to you, is that you are supplying that missing element that they need.
Well, thank you.
Self-actualization,
Yeah.
to express themselves, and whether they're going to go on and work for Hasbro as once you did,
I still do, by the way. I never retired.
Oh, I thought
No,
you did.
no. This is another
is a side
aspect.
gig?
No, I had 3 Hasbro projects this week.
Wow.
No, I mean I've been doing stuff for video games. I'm still in the game.
Wow.
No,
and
no,
that's
literally.
changed significantly too,
That
right?
game certainly has, but
Yeah.
because it's so 3D rendered now.
Right.
But they still need concept art. There still needs to be somebody with a hand on in my case, on an Apple Pencil or an iPad,
Right.
generating images that the 3D renderers can work from.
God, you
it
could
still needs that. It's still required.
You could almost become a recruiter for them.
I would absolutely. Something, it's funny, I think, and I don't know if Procreate does this, the app Procreate on the iPad does this. I would gladly be an ambassador for their brand, because how that's unlocked my ability to be creative quickly.
Right.
And significantly, and myself and gazillion other artists all over the world.
Right.
I would absolutely do. But the point is, I think I 100% the idea of there being if anyone from the 80s remembers the movie Fame.
Yes.
Right.
I want to live forever.
I want to. Yeah, seriously. Get Irene Cara in here, right?
Right.
Seriously,
right.
Well,
the Fame School, which
Yeah.
was the New York High School for the Visual and Performing Arts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
How about the New Bedford High School for the Prison? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I guarantee there's enough creative kids throughout the city right? Because I mean, I've seen the art. I was asked to judge the district-wide, the New Bedford district-wide art program or art show at the old New Bedford High.
Right.
And I'm looking around this room. It's like there's so many talented kids.
Yeah.
And I'm using the term kids because they're legitimately below a certain age. But I mean,
exactly.
From all high school all the way down to the middle school, like talking 6th and 7th graders. Like I mean, so at least the visual arts covered. And I know there's a lot of performing arts kids all around town.
Right.
So
in the traditional studio arts, the opportunities aren't there as there are in the digital arts, only because studio arts is one thing, digital arts is another thing. And the traditional arts, studio arts, you have to deal with galleries and museums, and there's a whole different strata.
Which I imagine that work's changed significantly over time, right?
Yes, and then social media came into it, and now what that did is like, okay, so if you thought you were looking at a pond full of artwork, of paintings, it's an entire ocean.
Right, yeah. It's like 3 planets worth of oceans.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to wrap this up.
Okay.
So any final things that you want to get said for this podcast?
Well, like I said, I mean, I am still in the struggle, right? So I am still a live working professional artist. But I feel like I want to fill that gap that you just referred to. I want to find that place, at least until the school is up and running, until that that performing arts school is up and running. I want to be that for anyone locally, anyone here in our area, our radius, all the way out to Rhode Island and up to, whoever is willing to drive down.
Right.
Come down, SketchyGOichie Draw with an exclamation point. In fact, on the web, it's SketchyGOichie Draw. Let me spell it out, right?
Okay, yeah.
Sketchy, SketchyGO ICHIE.net/draw, DRAW. That's how you find us on the web. And if I could fill the room with those kids and the young ones and the young adults, I would be grateful for that opportunity to kind of share what we have with them. Again, upload some of that goodness, right? That being creative and listen, not everyone's going to do this for a living, right? We all know that. In fact, not everyone's supposed to do this for a living, but it's a heck of a hobby.
Yeah.
Right? If you can develop this as a hobby with whatever, and the idea of being creative, if you can see that idea, and if you're a creative engineer, how great are you? If you're a creative doctor, if you're a creative plumber, if you're creative whatever, just to see that I want to foster that spirit of creativity in whatever way I can, and this is my little small way of doing that.
Wow. Well, we're gonna have to. That's a good wrap. That's for
Awesome.
sure. Yep. So, folks, if you came in at some point after the introduction, my name is Ron Fortier. I'm with my illustrious guest. There's a double-edged there, right? In my illustrious guest,
see how you did that.
Roger Andrew, and just be kind to each other out there and enjoy every day to its fullest. So, with that in mind, we'll catch you on the next podcast. Thanks for now. Bye-bye.
We'll see you next week for another episode of the South Coast Artist Index podcast. To learn more about the South Coast Artist Index, visit theartistindex.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.